to the Locked On Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares from DNVR, and I'm joined by my co-host, senior NBA writer from the Action Network, Matt Moore. Matt, it's good to see you, buddy. I mean that sincerely. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm glad. I look forward to seeing you in person at some point in the probably distant future.
Maybe, yeah, I guess so. I was going to say maybe not so distant future because the NBA is coming back, but I guess that doesn't really matter either, does it?
Yeah, don't know if they're going to let us in the building because the last time that there was a pandemic threat, they thought that we were all diseased rats. So I don't know that they're going to let the media back into the building first thing or not.
Probably not. Probably not. Why don't you tell us who we're presented by today, Matt?
Yeah, today we're brought to you by sportsbetting.com. New players get a welcome bonus as well as a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. Visit sportsbetting.com/LockedOnNuggets today. We're also brought to you by Built Bar. Delicious, tasty, nutritious Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com/LockedOnNBA. Get yourself $10 off your first order at BuiltBar.com.
So we got a great show for you today. Back at the end of the show, there'd be a fun little thought experiment here. If we take the 10 rotation players for the Denver Nuggets last year, and we talk about who are the three most expendable players on the Denver Nuggets roster. It's kind of a good way to talk about which players maybe are less important to the team's overall success. We're going to talk about the NBA. There's a very good chance that when the schedule comes out, whenever that happens, they're going to be doing some baseball series type things where teams will fly to a city and play a bunch of games in a row, almost like a baseball series. So we're going to talk about the three teams we'd be most excited to see that for. But we're going to start today's show by talking about Jrue Holiday because he popped back up into the trade rumor mill, I guess, today with Shams Charania announcing that the New Orleans Pelicans are actively, I think the way he phrased it was, are actively taking calls or having conversations about it, which doesn't mean that they're shopping him. It just means that, I don't think we've had like the solid report of, okay, they do want to move on. There's been a little bit of maybe they want to keep him to develop the young guys. I think it seems now like it's at least likely that the Pelicans would feel like the better course of action for them and their team development would be to move on. Is that the sense that you got from that tweet and from everything else you've heard about him?
So here's what I know. There was a report today out of New Orleans from Mason Ginsberg, who writes for one of the local sites, that said that so far Jrue has not asked out, that this was more of a decision. So they are taking calls and accepting calls. But the thing is like that only gets out either because somebody is trying to pry him loose and they're saying like, well, they took our call, so he's on the market, to try and get him out there, or because the Pelicans are like, hey, just want to let me know we're open for business. It's kind of like lays the groundwork for it.
Sure.
I think probably the situation is that Jrue Holiday is like, look, if you guys want to keep me, I signed my contract with you. I've been here for the majority of my career. I'm happy to play here. Like Drew's one of those guys that will do right by the team. He will abide by his contract. He will do like what the team needs him to do.
He's first team all class, I would say, in the NBA.
Yes. Really good dude, widely admired, lots to kind of dig in there. I fully expect that the Nuggets not only will be on the call sheet, I would say that they probably have already been on the call sheet. I think that call's already been made. I think that call has already probably gone several steps. I don't think it's likely that a deal gets done at this point, but I would not be surprised if Jrue Holiday wound up in Denver because of a number of factors. There's a good relationship between the front offices. This is the first thing that I always look at.
Right,
Like question one,
great point.
Do the front offices get along? David Griffin and Tim Connelly they've talked in deals before. I think they've done deals before. There's an ongoing relationship there. There's a measure of good faith. This is important because, like, let me put it this way. You're never going to see the Utah Jazz trading with the Philadelphia 76ers for the foreseeable future because the Utah Jazz will not trade with Daryl Morey. So there are various outcomes in which like the two teams don't do deals. The New York Knicks do deals with Morey all the time. There are these relationships that extend. There's a good relationship there. Obviously, Conley's known in longtime team employees. Most of those folks are gone now, but Conley obviously worked in New Orleans, so there's a little bit of familiarity there. I think also there's just like a natural fit there in terms of if you're moving Holiday at age 30 on that contract, you're going to get pretty good offers, but it depends on what you're looking for. So like the Nets are able to offer.
Can we stop there? Can we stop before we get into that? Because I want to first set the parameters for you here. let's assume that the Nuggets can keep Jokic and Murray. I think that's a lock. Can keep Michael Porter Jr. and Jeremy Grant. Okay. Other pieces, in flux. But if they kept those players and were able to acquire Jrue Holiday, where does that place Denver in your mind? Are they favorites, contenders, fringe contenders? I mean, where are they?
I would say that their odds of reaching the Western Conference Finals for in 2 consecutive seasons, and granted, I've underestimated them before, but I think their odds of getting there right now are somewhere between 10 and 20%. I think they have a 10 and 20% chance of getting back to the Western Conference Finals. Got to go through the Clippers. They're not going to overlook them this time. You got to get through the Warriors, got to get through the Lakers. One of those 3 teams you're going to have to get through. Okay. So I would say that's like 10 to 20% now. You add Jrue Holiday.
Rather than put percentage on it, where do they rank? Where are their odds relative to the rest of the Western Conference? So are they the second most likely team to make the Western Conference, the fourth? Where are they? Tied
I would say
teams?
Yeah, I would say that they're tied for third likeliest.
Wow.
Right. I put Lakers 1. I would put either Warriors or Clippers, but not both at 2. And then the third team I would slot in there is tied with Denver.
Okay.
I think that adding Jrue Holiday probably moves them into a tie for the second spot.
Okay.
I think that
the reason I asked this though, Matt, is because I wanted to. It doesn't sound like I think a lot of Nuggets fans, I think, want to look at it as like, does that make us the favorites? I don't think the Nuggets can be favorites. Like, if Giannis wants to come to Denver, okay, they might be the favorites. But outside of something like that, I think their best bet is that they are a contender and they're just in the club. But you sound a little bit even lower than that, I would say, from that, meaning that Denver with Jrue Holiday, with the Jrue Holiday upgrade, makes them basically where they were this last year. I mean, they were a toss-up. They were a Game 7 into the Western Conference Finals. That to me makes they're more or less tied for the second. So that's an important baseline. So now we talk about value, and you were going to get into this with some of the other contenders. What do you think the market is for Jrue Holiday?
I don't know, and a lot of that is because, one, you have to establish what Jrue wants. This is a big part of it, is that you're not going to do something that's going to upset Jrue Holiday because of the impacts that it has on signing veterans later. You have to be able to say, like, we take care of our guys. And 2, David Griffin has a good history of doing such things. And 3, they're going to try and abide by Drew's wishes. If Drew's like, do not send me here, I want to go to a contender, etc. Like, that will be on the table. If they're not going to trade Jrue Holiday to Atlanta, I don't think that's going to happen. So the question is, like, where does Jrue want to go? Does he like the idea of playing in Brooklyn next to KD and Kyrie? Does he like the idea of playing in Denver for kind of an underrated team with a good chemistry? Does he like the idea of going to the Clippers and dealing with all of that? These are all questions I think that you have to keep in mind. And so I think the value for him, I think the starter package for Denver would be probably Will Barton and Gary Harris.
Both of them. Okay.
Both of them. And then the Houston pick.
This year, 22nd pick. Okay.
Yeah. The question is whether or not you need to include a second pick with that or not. And then, like, whatever comes back, you have to make the salaries match. So it's just like you may have to throw in some stuff. But in general, like, that's
Bates Diop.
Yeah.
Or Monte Morris. Like, Monte Morris is a player of value. Keita Bates Diop, probably not.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think that Monte Morris would necessarily be a deal breaker.
Okay.
That's my opinion. Tim Connelly might be like, no, he's absolutely deal breaker. Like, they want to extend Monte Morris. That's the thing that they want to do. But if it's like we can get Jrue Holiday, the idea will probably be, I will figure out another backup point guard. Like, I will figure out something. I'll draft somebody. PJ Dozier can do more, whatever. And that gives them the opportunity to be like, hey, we can use this. And it's a sweetener. So, I think I don't get the sense from the Nuggets that they're like, I haven't talked to anybody that's been like, gotta get Jrue Holiday. Like, good player. Like, that's the whole thing. And there was a conversation. Andrew Sharp today tweeted this over at the GOAT pod. He talked about how at this point, I think Jrue Holiday is probably a little overrated. Yeah. And it's probably true, just in the sense that there's a lot of times when guys that are singled out as being the difference maker, the one underrated piece that puts you over the top, they very rarely wind up being that. The comparison I made was Antoine Jameson with the Cavs. Antoine Jameson was a phenomenal player with Washington. Like, scores, rebounds, 3-point range, could do it all. He got traded to Cleveland, and he just wasn't a difference maker. He just didn't make the difference for that team. So ultimately, I think Jrue Holiday is a guy that, like, in the perfect spot. Like, do I like the fit in Denver? I do. I love it. Like, you put Jamal Murray and Jrue Holiday. Holiday is totally happy to play off ball. He's totally happy to play pick and roll. He's a great passer. He is an elite defender, even if the defense, he's not a guy that's going to make your defense good, because point guards almost never do that.
Yeah.
He does a lot of the things that you would want. He doesn't suck up any of the oxygen that Jokic, MPJ, and Murray need. Like, he is a plug and play. Guy's not going to be like, what about my touches? What about my points? Like, he's just going to be like, just want to win. Yeah. So from that perspective, I think that he's a great fit, but he's also, it's not like you put Murray or you put Holiday on this team and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is a top 10 defense. That's not what I think. Or I think that this is an offense that's going to be top 5 when it wasn't before.
That package you threw together, that had Barton, it had Harris, it had the pick. Is that, to you, is that a deal you'd pull the trigger on?
For which side?
For Denver.
I would, yeah. I don't know in this draft if there's, like, this is the difference, is that I haven't done the draft prep. So if they're like, we really think we can get a guy that's going to be like a major contributor, then okay. This is a notoriously flat draft in terms of the value. You might be able to buy or move into another pick and still get a guy. You might be able to trade back and get a guy. There's a lot of options for what you can do here. At the same time, for me, I just look at it as you add Jrue Holiday, and if Jamal Murray needs to miss 5 games because his ankle's bad, you don't have to rush him back. You got Jrue Holiday. He can slide over, play point guard. It's fine. You add Jrue Holiday, and now, like, the 2-guard depth is hurt then, right? Like, you no longer have Harris. You no longer have Barton. And those are 2 guys that have been big parts of the team, both in the locker room, the chemistry, the culture, and on the court. Those guys do a lot, right? And Holiday's not like you're going to have to find that production fill somewhere. But again, then we return back to the MPJ question.
He has to fill in a lot of that goes out the door scoring wise. Right.
But it also means that you're basically, what you do with this is you add a multifunctional weapon to your starting 5 while also being like, and MPJ gets a few more shots.
Right.
And that's not the worst thing in the world.
So the thing I like is if you have Jeremy Grant, you bring back Paul Millsap again, let's make that assumption, and you have Jrue Holiday. What I like about that is it felt like Denver had offensive guys and defensive guys. You now get Jeremy Grant, Jrue Holiday, Paul Millsap, all are 2-way guys. They're not killing you on one end of the floor. Like, they can do something on the offense and defensive end. If you want to put a little bit more offense on the court, in the backcourt, you have other guys that you can throw out there that can fill that need. If you need to go a little bit more defensive, maybe you take MPJ out, you put Grant in, and then you put an offensive guy in the backcourt. So I just feel like it makes Denver a little bit more versatile in terms of having 2-way guys, rather than just having to go offense or defense. So I don't know. I've talked myself into Jrue Holiday over these last few weeks at that price. The question I just have is, I don't know if that's the price for New Orleans. I don't know if that's what they want, or if they want you to throw in a second pick. Do they want you to throw in Bol? What is it that they want?
If the offer from New Orleans has been rumored is true, that's Karis LeVert and Jared Allen. If that's true,
you're one of those guys that likes that one, huh? I think that's such a crap deal. That's such a New Orleans move to me.
So here's the thing: is like Karis LeVert is better than Gary Harris and Will Barton. Like, he's better than either one of them. So if you're comparing those 2 deals, you get the better player. Jared Allen is just like extremely plug and play, good attitude, has a lot of upside. There's a lot of metrics that favor what he can do. You're not getting like backlog because, like, think about if you're New Orleans and you make that deal, you have Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Will Barton, Gary Harris, Josh Hart. Like, you're now like, you have so many guards on the team. Like, that's a lot. It's a glut, you know? Yeah. And Ingram plays a lot of 3, so it's fine. But I'm just saying, like, that's kind of an issue. I think, I don't think that's a bad offer. I'll also say this, like, it's possible. I don't think it's likely. It's possible that I'm wrong and that Harris Barton in the pick is not the offer. It's also entirely possible. This is the biggest reason I think that the deal probably will not happen, is there is a problem with GMs. if you know a guy this is why the Celtics never pull off the deal. If you know the guy has an asset that he's not willing to put on the table, but you know that's the best asset that he has, if he's not willing to put it on the table, it's almost a no starter. Like, it's just, you can't. If you're the Pelicans, you almost walk into the deal going like, I have to get MPJ. Like, I'm giving you,
yeah, maybe
I'm giving you my first team all defense, extremely efficient, sometimes good shooting, veteran guard. I'm giving a former all-star. I'm giving that guy to you
for 1 year.
I need your young stud. Yeah, exactly, for 1 year. I need your young stud. And it's like, I think in that, and I do not think under any circumstances the Nuggets would put MPJ into a Jrue Holiday deal ever.
Odds on a deal getting done with Jrue Holiday winds up in Denver?
15% right now.
No, that's not too bad. That's about what I would say. I don't think it's likely, but we'll see. These things grow; they swell over time. The number changes. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
Where you can find other good numbers.
Where can I like odds and betting lines?
Indeed, at sportsbetting.com. Adam, sportsbetting.com is now live and taking action in Colorado. They're passionate about sports and the authority on sports betting. With their own in-house bookmakers, sportsbetting.com is known for their sharp odds and low juice, and that means the best prices for you. New players get a welcome bonus, a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. And they offer no hassle bonuses with just a one-time playthrough. Speaking of the devil, by the way, your Denver Broncos open as a 4-point underdog to the Atlanta Falcons. I will tell you that all of the people I know that are very sharp are getting in on them Broncos. This is not me advising that pick. I'm just telling you the move has already gone down to 3.5. That is on the move. I would expect it to be down 2.5 to 2 by the time that this thing kicks off, if not lower. The money is going to be on the Broncos. So great time to get in at sportsbetting.com with their NFL touchdown and first touchdown scores. Get your action on at the home of sports betting. That's sportsbetting.com/Locked On Nuggets. We're also brought to you today by Built Bar. They're healthy, they're nutritious, they're delicious, and they come in all sorts of flavors. Adam, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of folks this week have been making a pretty big decision. And one of those decisions is about what's the best thing for them. Well, the best thing for everyone is Built Bar because it's got great flavors like carrot cake and apple almond crisp, peanut butter, double chocolate, coconut. There's stuff, some of them are really salty, like the salted caramel. You may want that if you live in certain places. You may want salted caramel in your Built Bar if you live in certain places because of certain reasons this week. Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. They're soft and easy to chew. The coconut almond has 18 grams protein, 180 calories, 5 grams sugar, and only 5 grams net carbs. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON. That's promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get $10 off your next order. Use promo code LOCKEDON for $10 off at BuiltBar.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
Back here on Locked On Nuggets with Matt Moore, Matt Amadeus. I was going to say, I hate to say I told you so. I actually like to say I told you so. And not you. I'm telling the audience here I told you so. And that this December 22nd deadline that the players pushed back on and said, no chance. This is crazy talk. Looks like that will become official as early as tomorrow. Players Association meeting to and expected to agree to those terms. In large part, of course, it's like as it always is. It comes down to the money. 72 game schedule beginning on December 22nd, and players will recoup a decent amount of their money. I mean, let's be honest. Like they're not going to lose nearly as much as what they would have if they would have pushed this back to January 18th. It sounds though like one of the compromises that'll have to be made because we are living in a pandemic that probably isn't going away. Teams, they want to limit travel. You want to limit exposure. They'll probably have these series where a team will fly. Okay, you play against Utah, a couple times a year. Maybe we're going to up that. You're going to play Utah more times a year, maybe 6 times a year. You're going to go fly to Utah and play a 3-game series. Maybe Utah flies to Denver, plays a 3-game series. So we're going to have these like contained series matchups where teams play multiple times in a row. First of all, do you like that idea? Does that kind of get you excited, or do you think it's kind of you hate the idea?
I love this idea. I think this is such a phenomenal idea. Like, one of the problems is that because the NBA season is so long and the appearances are spread out, you do not really generate any genuine sense of dislike. we see it in the playoffs, and everybody's like,
yeah.
everybody's like, oh, it's because of the playoffs. It is, but it's also, if you talk to the players, they're like, well, you've played them like 3-4 times. Like, I'm tired of seeing these dudes. Like, I'm tired of getting hip checked in the exact same spot every time I come down the floor by the same guy. I'm tired of getting elbowed whenever I go up for a rebound in the back of the head. Like, I'm tired of having to run off this dude from the 3-point line at 35 feet. You get tired of it, but that's good because it breeds tension. And I think that after you lose one, this has been a trend that bettors have really followed, is that after you lose one, if you play that same team within a week, your odds of winning that next game go up because you're motivated to get back at that team because it's more fresh in your mind, versus if you see them in January and then if you see them in November and then you don't see them again until February, you don't even remember that first game. You may have traded guys and teams and all this stuff. It's going to be really good, I think, for the league to have this repetitive nature, to have it be like, okay, even to say, and like, I'll be harping on tiebreakers. I'll be like, they need to take 3 or 4 in this specific matchup, in November, in December, in January. Like, you need to win these 3 of these 4 games in order to get yourself a comfortable lead for tiebreaker. So
I hadn't even thought about the animosity part of it, but you're absolutely right. That will breed some, I think, some interesting moments. So what matchups? We're going to look at 3. Each give 3. What matchups are you most excited for Denver, for them to play? They might not play everyone, by the way. These look like they're very likely 72-game series. They'll probably play only some of the teams in the NBA multiple times.
Yeah, and probably only early on. I think number 1, I think, needs to be Portland.
Okay.
Division rivalry, playoff history, the Nurkic factor, Dame. It fits all the boxes. It's Oregon versus Colorado, which is a little bit of a Northwestern, like, that's a real Northwestern rivalry. Like, it's not like super close, but to me,
it's a stretch.
I think that's a real rivalry in terms of, like, they're on the same level of franchise. The Blazers have made the playoffs most years over the last 5 years. The Nuggets have made the playoffs now 2 years in a row and have been competitive. So it's like, this to me feels like a very natural fit for those 2 teams to play.
That's a good one. The Nurkic factor alone will be interesting. You got Damian and Jamal Murray, who also just happened. Like, I mean, you look at the best players on each side there, Murray and Dame. Okay, Nurkic and Jokic match up well. You got CJ and the other pieces or whatever, but I like it. I think that's a great one. I was also thinking about this as we're talking about it. I wonder how much if coaching becomes more important in the regular season than usual, because coaching throughout a regular season is usually about, the 82 games, just get through the grind. Yes. Maybe we put a scouting report in the morning. Sometimes we have shoot around. Sometimes we don't. We have a scouting report. You play a team 3 times in a row, you're actually putting together a strategy to beat those teams. So that could be fun, that matchup between those 2.
Yeah, that's really big. We need to talk about that. Like, that's huge, because the guys just don't pay attention to the scouting report because they're like, man, I don't know. Like, we got another game in 24 hours, and like, I got to eat, and like, my girl's calling. Like, I don't have time for this. Like, they just do not. And it drives me crazy because I'm just like, the whole point is for sports to be like tactical. It's supposed to be like adjustments. And how do we, like, the thing that makes playoff basketball awesome in part is the matchups. Right. And we never get that in the regular season. It's just
I just thought of another matchup there. Gary Trent Jr. and Michael Porter Jr. Actually, sneaky good little matchup there. Those guys were going at each other. They have a history going back to high school. So something fun there.
Possibly the Carmelo factor.
Almost certainly the Carmelo factor. So there you go. Carmelo's still not won a game in Denver since he left. All right, give me another one. I did not have that, by the way. So give me another one.
So my second one is I've told myself I can only use 2 division teams.
Okay,
gotta be Utah. I almost took OKC, but I just don't think that they'll be good enough next year for it to be genuinely tense, as good as they were this year. I think Chris Paul's probably gone, and in that case, I think Gallo is definitely gone. I think there are more changes on the way for OKC, and so I think you have to go with Utah. You've got a 7-game playoff series, divisional rival. Traded them their 2 franchise players, which don't get along.
Honestly, that's in the past.
But here's a great thing: Denver traded them 2 franchise players that don't get along light years. light years.
Very light years.
By Tim Collins.
Centers and point guard matchup, so we know that there's the main pieces are there for it. And then you talk about rivalries. I mean, Utah Denver, that one's a natural rivalry to me. So I'm with it. They are on my list. Of course, I don't even think we have to say any more about it because I think everybody gets that would be a great matchup. Actually, first let me ask you: Portland, Denver. How many game series is 3-game series?
Something like that. Yeah, it's either gonna be 3 or 4.
Who is the 3-game series in the Portland Denver regular season one? I know it's whatever. I'm just curious.
Do I know
who wins the series? Portland and Denver.
Oh, Denver 3-1.
So it's a 4-game series.
Yes, 4-game series.
3-1. Utah.
Split 2-2.
I agree on Utah. You know what? I agree on Portland as well. 3-1. All right, what's your last one?
My last one is a little bit different. It's the Phoenix Suns.
Okay. I almost put them, so not that different. What's your thought?
So you need to keep it geographically reasonably close. Like this is a thing, and in part, this is also based off of the COVID ideas, which is if a region is doing okay, then everybody's fine. If all of the regions are messed up, then everything it's well, you're already in a mess anyway. I think Phoenix is going to be better next year. It's a team trying to be a little bit like Denver in terms of added some veterans, but a young core with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, Miles Bridges, who may or may not be a thing. Mikhail, sorry, is it Mikhail or Miles?
Mikhail.
Mikhail is in and the other one. Miles Bridges is the other one. Good young team. They've had some fun, entertaining games. I like the idea of Booker and Murray going back and forth. It's a good matchup for Joker. So I think that you can't just give Denver all the tough games, right? You can't just constantly schedule them against a tough one. So I would take Phoenix. I think is a pretty good mid-level matchup that gives the Suns something to look up to, a competitive one and one they might win. The other one that was on my list was New Orleans because of how competitive those games have been.
Yeah. Phoenix, a great one. Jamal Murray always plays well. All of his best games seem to be against Phoenix, non-playoff games. And then, of course, you have Jokic with a perfect triple-double, 35-point triple-double against them. So there's a chance that those two would just trade off historic games. So I'm with it. I'll go Denver 4-0 against Phoenix. I feel good about that one.
Yeah, sounds right.
All right, mine, I had Utah right there with you. I've got the Timberwolves next.
Ooh.
I mean, I just like a Towns-Jokic matchup. I like when guys have to go at it. We haven't seen Towns in a playoff setting, and I'd be very curious to see what happens. We always talk about these great players. What happens when a team game plans for you? And I just would like to see it. And then you would like to see Jokic versus Towns. You'll see who can carry it. You get the Wancho factor. You get the Beasley factor. So I like that. I like that one. It's funny. It's a little bit of, I guess, Schadenfreude because it might be the only time we get a chance to see Towns in the playoffs against Jokic. So
you just picked them so you could make that joke. That's the only reason that you picked them was so you could get that dig in on Cat.
Jokic against the best in a playoff setting. So there you go. And that feeds into my other one, which I'm breaking the rules. This one will not happen, but I wish it could happen. And that was Philadelphia. And for the exact same reason, I want to see Jokic and Embiid in a playoff setting. I want to see when those guys have to go at it. We might never see it. So I put mine solely based on the basketball, in a vacuum basketball. I want to see what happens.
What's frustrating is, what's one of them is absolutely going to be if they do this, they're going to give them the Lakers. They're absolutely going to give them the Lakers.
Yeah.
Kroenke's going to want it because it gives him a chance to be in LA and to showcase his team in LA.
They'll be on TV. That'll be great.
Yeah, this is the owner of LA Rams. They're on the cryon underneath. They'll absolutely give them the Lakers. They are gonna get that team as many times as I think because it's crazy because it's the Lakers won 4-1, but there does continue to be this kind of sense that that was a really competitive series, and it's I guess for it being 5 games, yeah. So. Yeah. I think that there's going to be they'll do that one. I do think Portland or Utah is likely though.
Yeah, I do too. I think a lot of these division ones are probably likely. Timberwolves 3-1. I think Towns goes way off in a game that Jokic falls asleep in, and then 76ers 2-2. So that'd be mine. All right, let's take another break. When we come back on the other side, this will be a fun thought experiment. 3 guys. We got to talk about the 3 guys in the 10-man rotation that are least important. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Nuggets podcast, I'm Adam Matas, joined by Matt Moore. All right, so one way to think about this team now, you go through the main 10 guys. PJ Dozier doesn't make the 10. He's the 11th guy. So he did not make my list. Tried to make this hard on myself. Top 10 guys. Who are the least important? You give me your list of 3. I'll tell you which ones I had and which ones I didn't.
So I think number 1 has to be Torrey Craig. I would expect us to have both picked Torrey Craig on this list.
He's not my number 1. He's on my list, of course.
Just because, Torrey's capable of being a really impactful, great defender.
Mm-hmm.
Very specific matchups. He is very much like a selective pitcher, like a bullpen guy that you can pull out versus, like a lefty or whatever. Yeah. You can pull him out in very specific situations, and he can be very impactful. He can act as a cooler for certain matchups. But overall, I think that there are a lot of holes in it, and we saw in the playoffs how crucial it was for Denver to have guys that had to be guarded, and they have those guys now. And for me, honestly, a lot of it is you could be the team that has one of these guys that always hustle and effort when you're trying to be the scrappy underdog. The Nuggets are now a Western Conference finalist. It is time for them to move past those type of dudes. It's good to have them, but if we're talking about not being necessary, and I want to bear in mind, Torrey Craig helped them get to where they got to last year. He had good games in the playoffs. He had good games in the regular season. Torrey Craig is a contributor to the Nuggets. Everybody chimed in. This is about degrees of importance.
Totally.
And then you just have to walk away with the fact of Torrey Craig. If Torrey Craig is not available, you have a lot more paths to a victory than with some of the other players.
I think Torrey Craig, to use your baseball analogy, he might be that left-handed guy that you bring in the 9th every now and then. He gets the out for you. Malone starts him every now and then, and it's just okay, we're 6 innings into Torrey here. I think that lefty changeup not really working anymore. We need to tamper it down. So, but that's not his fault. He's a useful piece. He was my second on my list. He wasn't first. So let me hear what your second is. We probably just have him switched. I don't know.
My second, I was really torn on this one. I decided I could only have one of the two. And so I selected Mason Plumley, actually.
He was my number 1.
You can, because in the playoffs he plays so little.
Yeah.
I thought he played better in the playoffs. He genuinely, as much as everybody killed him online, I've thought, especially in the Utah series, he had some really good games. He had genuinely good games. And so I think that he again, there are nights when he gives them a lot, and his passing is genuinely good. He's a genuinely good passer, but he's not a great defender. He's not the kind of rim protector that they kind of traded for him to be. He tries to reverse dunk too much. Doesn't he's gotten really good about basically faking the post move as opposed to going to it. He just usually fakes the post move to get them to try and help and then passes.
Don't know what I agree with that, but okay.
I saw that more as the year went on. I thought still in the early season, he was still shooting a lot of those shots, but as the season went on, I didn't see him taking nearly as many hook shots. Then again, that was, 11 years ago, the last time I saw him play. So who knows? But just, I don't think you can absolutely replace a lot of what Mason's done. And I think that his value comes a lot in his character and how much he works and how professional he is, and that he gets the job done. He's not a problem for anybody. But at the same time, the skill set is just a level of, I don't think you need him as much as you need some of the other guys.
That's the whole thing about it. I think all these other guys have a specific need that extends to almost every team, every game, all throughout. Mason Plumley, I think his value, as you mentioned, I think good locker room guy, good character guy, plug him in, does his job, doesn't complain. I think the real value for him is that in the regular season, he wins you games. He's just good. He's a soldier that you can put out there, and he plays in a bunch of them. So, but in the playoffs, he's the first guy cut out of that rotation every single time. You don't play him at power forward ever. So that's why he's the last on my list. So this was the hard one, man. Number 3. After those two, I think it gets kind of hard personally.
This breaks my heart, and I can't believe I suggested this topic to us.
I know. 3 was the right number. Oh no,
it's Gary Harris.
Oh wow. Okay, we differ, but okay. Did you? Let me ask you one question real quick. Did you happen to catch the first round matchup between the Nuggets and Jazz?
I did.
Oh, okay. So, and you still picked Gary.
I did. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. You want to know why? Part of it is that, yes, he helped turn that series around. But he was ineffective versus the Clippers in large part because of what I was always talking about, which is the size problem. Can't guard Paul George because Paul George is too tall. Can't guard Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is too tall and too big. Can't guard. He did okay on Lou Williams, but you're not really worried about Lou Williams. Like, that's not a great playoff player. I just have to see Harris shoot 39% or better from three again. And until he does that, I cannot have faith that he is a complete player in terms of his contribution. Like, the defense is phenomenal. But if you ask me to choose between Will Barton, who can run backup point, who can be another floor spreader, who can run the break effectively, who gave really good defense last year, not Gary Harris level, but really good defense. The other thing is just like, I think I have kind of come around to the idea that this can be a really good team systemically, defensively, and that personnel can make it better, but they don't need the personnel to be a good defense. And if we're going to say that they do, I can't get to a sadly injury prone, undersized guard. Now, again, I think Gary Harris is phenomenal. I think he's going to have a long career in this league. I think he's a guy that helps you win. I think he's a winner. Like, I think Gary Harris is a winner. Like, he has great work ethic. He shows up. He plays hard every night. I love Gary Harris, which is why this is painful. But of the guys that are remaining, I just can't sit there and say that you can get away without him. Like, I could have said Bol, right? Like, that would be like an easy one. It's
he's not in the rotation, though. He me, he didn't qualify.
Right. And I could have gone with Paul Millsap because of, how old he is.
Yeah.
But I do think that you need guys that know how to defend at that level, especially bigs, and that there are certain things that Millsap can still really provide, especially at a pretty soft power forward position. I think that's important. And so I wound up going with Harris, and it doesn't make me happy. And like, I would love it if I was completely wrong, and that by February, I'm talking about like, oh, Gary Harris is like back. Gary Harris is back.
I don't know, man. I was really hopeful for that, but I had this short off season. It gives me less hope. So I went with Will Barton, and it was between Gary Harris and Will Barton. And I think that I don't feel like I'm right about that. I could very well be wrong. I feel like it's a little bit of a coin flip. But here's the thing. Last year, an extremely young Denver Nuggets team made it within a game of the Western Conference Finals, largely without Will Barton. He had his moments, but he wasn't the same. He was injured. This year, they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals without him. He's a guy to me that the skill set, when applied perfectly, is more important than Gary Harris, full stop. No questions asked. I just don't – I do wonder if that – ideal Will Barton just doesn't actually exist, because sometimes you get a little bit too much Will Barton, or miss him. I don't know. So I honestly don't know. It's 50-50 to me with those guys. They provide you different things, but I think in a pinch, Gary Harris has one elite value. Will Barton is a jack of all trades guy, and that's really valuable. But I would tend to maybe slide to Gary there, because I know if we going up against another elite guard, Gary Harris is going to guard him just about as well as anybody will.
Maybe this is the best way to put it. Gary Harris is the floor player. Will Barton's the ceiling.
Yeah, I think so. I hope I'm wrong about Will Barton. Just saying this feels dirty. Why'd you just suggest this topic, man?
Yeah, I feel horrible. I feel horrible. We spent all this
time talking bad about Gary Harris and Will Barton. Let's get out of here.
Thanks, everybody, guys. They're great.
I love those guys too. Thanks, everybody, for hanging with us and for tuning in. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow. Going to have Kristen Peak on the show. She's got a phenomenal reporter. She's going to be telling us about the NBA draft. Can't wait for that. So stick around. We'll see you guys tomorrow with that one. We'll see you then.